Okay, so I'm Patrick Dempsey. All right, and as you can see, I'm a dog trainer and behaviorist. My experience and expertise goes into canine behavior, but I also can work with, and I do work with feline behavior as well. Uh, Obedience training is one of the aspects of canine behavior that I do work with, but I really hone in my skills and expertise in behavior modification for reactive and aggressive dogs. My goal is with my business as well as with our nonprofit is to work with as many dogs as possible that are in the shelters and through the systems that are behaviorally unfit for adoption to try to help them become more well balanced so that way they can be adopted. So that is my general idea for all of that, and the reason for these seminars is so that way more people can find more education, so that way they can understand what might be going wrong in their life and their reality with their pets, so that way we can have less dogs being sent to the shelter. And that's my primary goal with all of this. So with that said, this is Beyond Sit and Stay Canine Training Methodologies. So timing is everything, right? It doesn't matter if you're using a prong collar, e-collar, going Pavlovian with a bell, a whistle, a clicker, treats, anything you do, timing is going to be everything in training. You'll see me say it a few times throughout this, that timing is everything, and I just wanted to really highlight that because that is going to be the basis of almost everything we do in training, regardless on what methodology you use. If you don't get the timing right, the training won't work. So, how do dogs learn? Associative learning. So associative learning is going to be Pavlovian. That is where we have our training where it is more internalized. They don't, at the end of associative learning, they don't get to make the choice. It's more of an emotional response to the training methods. While we have instrumental learning, which is going to be, we'll talk about it here shortly, is going to be operant conditioning, where the behaviors are strengthened and weakened based on consequences, based on good and bad consequences for actions, environments, things that happen in their life. So as far as dog training, since this is a smaller group, I get to be more personalized. I don't have to just sit up here and talk. I can talk to y'all. But you all own dogs, correct? Okay, so as far as associative learning, have you noticed your dogs ever display a behavior after a certain event has ever happened?
Absolutely.
Yeah? What's one that kind of comes up to your mind?
I've got a scooter that my dog's pulling around on, and I started ringing the bell, so the cats know that there was something going on, and they now associate the bell with being a cat. So they call ass when they're ringing the bell.
Absolutely, yes, for sure. So associative learning is Pavlovian. Do you know about who Ivan Pavlov was? Yeah. So very quick rundown. He did a study where he rang a bell, dispensed food, and then tested his salivatory glands in the dogs, and he found that eventually, if he takes the food away, they associate the bell with the food, and the response is increased salivatory response. So with that, they don't control that salivatory response. It is internalized. It's how it works. Now, again, timing is everything. What he found out through his studies is that if he rang the bell during the time that the food was dispensed or after it was dispensed, it did nothing. It had to be right before it was dispensed in order for the associative learning to occur. Now, as far as instrumental learning, it's the type of behaviors that are strength and weakened. That's what you're going to actually see most of the time when it comes to how you train your dogs. An example would be giving treats. So associative learning is known in the training world as classical conditioning. That's Pavlovian. So clicker training, excitement when keys jingle, the Pavlov's bell. If you go and touch the leash, for instance, they automatically associate that with going on a walk and they get excited. What do we use it for? We can use it for conditioning reward markers and other training tools. We can use it for socializing puppies and dogs, overcoming fears, decreasing aggression, reducing overexcitement. A lot of behavior modification when it comes to our dogs. does use this type of methodology, because what we want to do, especially with behaviors that are more of an emotion-based behavior, is we want to change the concept of that behavior by internalizing a new emotional response towards whatever that condition is. Classical conditioning continues. So this is how it works. So before conditioning, we have the neutral stimulus. Again, going back to Pavlov, that's the bell. That's our neutral stimulus, and there's no response. That is before conditioning, because why would there be a response? Our dogs haven't learned what it means, right? So during the conditioning, you're going to still have that neutral stimulus, and then there's an unconditioned stimulus, which will be the treats or the food. With Pavlov, that's what the unconditioned stimulus is. And then there's an unconditioned response, which would be the salivatory glands. So again, it can go with anything. Let's go with jingle of your car keys as an example. You take your dogs on car rides often, and then they start associating the jingle with the car ride, right? So before that, before you ever started taking your dogs out on car rides, the keys meant nothing at all. But as you were doing the conditioning without realizing you're doing the conditioning, they started associating jingle, car ride, excitement. They don't even have to go on the car ride to be excited. They know that that jingle means excitement. It means good things are about to happen. So after conditioning, after you do it enough times, the neutral stimulus will end up being this response. So that's the internalized emotional response. And with that said, it can always backtrack. So I'll go over this real quickly. I know it's a lot of information here, but again, this looks at the whole idea of Pavlov, but instead they're using a metronome. But acquisition, extinction, and spontaneous recovery. So basically, a really quick rundown of this is dogs can forget their conditioned responses, and they can also easily pick it back up. When we use the term extinction, it is when the conditioned response has become extinct. And it's very simple. All you have to do is work on the conditioned response very, very gently, basically, a very light conditioning, and they remember it again. Example would be, let's say your dog had surgery, and the car jingle, they're excited about it every time, but for the next 3, 4, 5 weeks, you don't take them on any car rides every single time you go out with the jingle. Their responses are going to start changing, because now that jingle doesn't mean car ride to them anymore. And very quickly after that, if you want to re-implement it, our conditioned stimulus with the car jingle will end up being a conditioned response by taking them back on that car ride. All of a sudden, they remember it again. So yes, they can extinct the condition, but they can also recover from it. So operant conditioning. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of speeding through these, because we're going to go in a lot more detail here shortly. So operant conditioning, treats as rewards, stopping the walk, clicker training, e-collars. If you can see, clicker training is on both of these. Clicker training actually originally starts as classical conditioning, but it quickly turns into operant conditioning after the dog starts associating the clicker with the response for our markers. So what do we use it for? Obedience training, socializing puppies and dogs, overcoming fears, decreasing aggression, reducing overexcitement, and overarousal. So as you can see, a huge chunk of this list bleeds over into each other between classical conditioning and operant conditioning. So instrumental learning is very important for dogs. Dogs learn in a lot of different ways, and instrumental learning is super important when it comes to us teaching them certain behaviors that we want them to do that they don't know yet. And that's why, if you use positive reinforcement, which is giving treats, praise, anything that is reinforcing the behavior, we're using that, for instance, to teach a sit. The dog never knew what a sit was, but they're learning it this way, and the way they learn is by making a decision, choosing, and because of their choice, they're getting that reward. Or because of their choice, they're not getting the reward, and they're making up their mind that it's better to do certain choices, and that's how they're learning through instrumental learning. So this is really important right here when it comes to operant conditioning. This is what it means in the training world. A lot of people always just assume that punishment means abuse or punishment means hurting a dog, and that's not what it means in the training world at all. Reinforcement only means that we are increasing the likelihood of a behavior from happening or to happen. And punishment, all it means is that we're decreasing the likelihood of a behavior from happening. That's all it means. And then negative and positive, they have certain meanings as well. Positive means we're adding something to an equation. Negative means we're taking something away. So an example of positive reinforcement, we're adding something in order to increase the behavior. We're adding a treat in order to increase the behavior. While let's say positive or negative reinforcement, we're taking something away to increase the behavior, right? So an example of, let's say, what did I say, negative reinforcement? So an example of negative reinforcement would be a dog is pulling, right? And I stop the walk. I'm taking the walk away in order to increase loose leash walking, but that also right there can bleed over into the punishment, where I am doing a negative punishment where I'm stopping the walk to stop the pulling. So that could be 2 in 1 right there. So a lot of these will bleed over into each other, and then you also have positive punishment, right? Positive punishment is where you're going to be adding something to decrease the behavior. If you talk to any trainer or behaviorist out there, what you're going to see time and time and time again is that they try to refuse to use any type of positive punishment at all, because that's where you're going to get the prong collars, e-collars, forces, things that are very uncomfortable for the dog. And a lot of times if these tools and devices and methods are used poorly, it's very easy to abuse them and harm an animal. So a lot of people do avoid using that. I'm a balance trainer myself, so I use all 4 quadrants right here. And I believe personally it's necessary because it's how a dog can learn. Dogs are not just one size fits all, and this is all that works. Every single dog is different. Every single method is different, and you might have to change it up based on what your dog needs and what works for your dog. So an example would be for punishment, positive punishment. Let's go into the e-collar training. I've done e-collar training many times, and it is super easy to abuse an electric collar. Electric collars have a lot of times have 3 different settings. You have a sound marker, which would be a beep. You have a vibration, and then you have a shock. And the shock can usually be set, especially with the good e-collars, that if anybody's going to buy one, they should be spending the money on a good one that's not going to malfunction. It's going to have a lot of settings for the shock setting from like 1 all the way up to 100, 150. I've never ever had to use an e-collar past 10. And at that point, if you put it on yourself, you can barely feel it. Dogs' necks and things like that are very sensitive, and all the tool is used for is so I can have a reach that I cannot do if the dog is off leash, just to say, hey, I'm here. It's not supposed to harm a dog. It's not supposed to shock them to where they yelp. That's not the purpose of the tool, but a lot of people misuse it. And unfortunately, when you misuse a tool like that, that's when we get bans and things like that, which is very detrimental for a tool that is actually really good in the proper hands. Nonetheless, all 4 quadrants are really important, because if we only use positive reinforcement, by definition, you can only increase a behavior. You will never decrease an unwanted behavior. Dogs, just like humans, just like any animal, learns by consequences, good and bad. So if you never teach a dog a boundary, this is unacceptable behavior, they're never going to know that that is unacceptable behavior. So I do think it is important that we do understand all these 4 quadrants in depth. And to go further into depth on the learning theory of operant conditioning, you have a lot of antecedents. So I'm sure it might be hard to read from there, but you have everything from bag ladies, mailman, bicyclists, you have nighttime, you have mom calling, you have toys, anything you could think that could be in their environment at home or outside is going to be your antecedent, right? And then you have your behavior right over here based on the antecedent, and then you have your consequence. And the consequence could be good or bad. And the consequence is going to mold and shape how the dog feels about certain things. So different aspects about this antecedents. You have targets, you have environmental cues, you have verbal and visual cues, training methods, etc. And then the behavior happens, and then how the behavior works, or if it doesn't work. But let's say a dog decides to jump a fence. let's say your dog decides to jump a fence, and during that jump, they snag themselves, injured themselves, let's say it's a chain link fence, the likelihood of them wanting to jump a fence again is going to decrease because their experience was a negative experience based on that. That is operant conditioning that they're doing on their own. While operant conditioning as a trainer, a handler, yourselves would be more of I am directly working with the dog. So the most fundamental law of behavior is that consequences drive behavior. That's an important quote I think that everybody should know. Pressure. All right. So in all training, whether you like it or not, you're going to be using some form of pressure. Resource pressure, physical pressure, social pressure, and spatial pressure. What do y'all think resource pressure means?
You're using or something?
Say again?
The collar you're using?
No, I would say that would be a physical pressure. Yeah, resource pressure would be withholding something that they want. For instance, a treat. Resource pressure is basically an animal's drive to get something that they want. That's resource pressure. Physical pressure would be more of collars, leashes, prong collars, e-collars, physically moving an animal. That's what physical pressure would be. What do you think social pressure means?
How's the dog with people or other dogs?
Sure. It's their drive. Social animals have a certain drive socially. On their social pressure is how they can achieve to be social animals and the people that they like, for instance, dogs, the people they like, to please them. And so we can add social pressures onto animals as well. An example would be if your dog is always demanding attention. You can create social pressure by removing your dog from your vicinity. Dog wants to be in your vicinity, but your dog learns that if your dog's going to be all over you jumping and things like that, the social pressure is if you do that, unwanted behavior, I'm not going to let you in my space that you want to be in. I created social pressure. Spatial pressure. Spatial pressure is one that we use all the time without realizing it. It's when we open a door and the dog tries to run out, so we use our body to maneuver the dog around. We're creating spatial pressure between us and the dog to force their body to move in different directions and use our own space for our advantage. So this is a really cool study right here, and this is huge on the reason why we're doing this seminar. So Hanover 2009 study of training pressure and stress. So Hanover in Germany, they did a study in 2009, and the goal was to use different training methodologies to stop behaviors from happening. And so they used prong collars, they used e-collars, and then they used the treat pressure, not allowing treats, and the goal was to find out what was more effective with the training method, as well as what was less stressful for the dog. And what they did was they used the saliva to check cortisol, and they used the cortisol to figure out the stress levels. So what they actually found out is that the electric collar that they used had the highest results out of all of them with the lowest stress, while the withholding the treats had the highest stress with the lowest results, right? So if we think about it, looking at this study specifically, if we say, okay, what is the most effective and less severe way to train a dog, you would automatically assume e-collar, right? But that isn't the case, not always. The thing about this study that I don't show right here is that they actually used over 40 police work dogs, all Malinois, that are extremely high drive dogs, highly trained dogs. So the certain pressures that they were using were more effective on these dogs. If you took a low drive breed or a bunch of low drive dogs based on their living situations and did this exact same study, the results would probably be the exact opposite. And the whole point of this is that we can look at study after study and they say different conclusions, but it's very, very, very different based on the type of dog we have, the dog's behavior, their instincts, their habits, their lifestyle. And so it's not a one shoes fits all. approach to training, and we need to stop thinking about that all around, that it's a one shoes fits all. Dogs are all individuals. They all have their own individual needs, and they all also approach training and training methodologies as individuals, and some things that work for some dogs don't for others. And so if we're having issues with training our dogs at home, maybe it's because we're not using what works for the dog. Molding, luring, capturing. Has anybody ever heard of these terms? No? All right. So after I explain the definitions or what they do, I'm sure you can say that you have used every single one of them on a daily basis. Molding. Molding, think of clay. We're molding clay. We're physically forming the clay. Molding is doing that, exactly that, to a dog. If we're trying to teach a dog to sit for the first time and they're not responding to anything else, so we kind of put pressure on their rear to get them to sit, that's molding. It is creating a behavior by physically moving the dog in order for them to understand that's the behavior we're looking for. Luring, on the other hand, is when we are using a reinforcer, like a treat, a toy, or something like that, to lure their body in different positions. Let's say I want to lay down, I lure the body down in order to get them in a stay position to reward them. So I'm luring the dog into those positions while capturing. Capturing is a unique one out of this. It's where we're not actually physically doing a single thing to force the dog to move around and do things. What it is we're looking for the dog to do what is naturally going to do, and then right when they naturally do it, we reward them. So we're capturing that behavior. Let's say your dog naturally comes up to you and sits down. Just naturally, that's just their behavior, what they do. You reward them right away. Now you're capturing the fact that, or the idea that, sitting is a good thing, and they're more likely to do it. So that is what capturing is. We all mold, we all lure, we all capture. We do it in our daily lives pretty much every single day. Molding probably less often, especially after they have some obedience down. But luring and capturing we absolutely do more often than we think. And dogs are always learning. Yeah, I love that picture. So dogs are always learning, whether we like it or not. They're always learning. And what I found most often whenever I have dogs with behavioral issues that I'm working with, I find that most of the time it's not the dog's fault it has these behavior issues. It's actually the pet owner's fault. And the reason for it, believe it or not, is because we are accidentally conditioning our dogs. We are doing things in the dog's life where we think we're helping or we think we're doing the right thing, but the dog is being conditioned in the wrong way. A very good example of this is dogs jumping up. Dogs jumping up on you. It happens in every single household, especially as puppies, and sometimes it can continue into adulthood and keep continuing. We never know why. Why does this dog always jump up? I always, whenever people are around, I'm always telling this dog, stop, no, go sit down, go lay down, doing everything I can do to stop this from happening. The reason why is because when you come home from work, you praise the dog immediately. Dog comes up to you, jumps up on you, you pet the dog, I love you, I want to love on you, and guess what you just did? You just accidentally conditioned the dog that if I'm going to get rewarded for this, I'm going to keep doing this and probably do it more often. That's just one example of many, many examples. Accidental conditioning doesn't always have to be a negative behavior or a bad behavior or unwanted behavior. It can also be a behavior that is positive, something you want. Going back to the jumping, if you always come home from work and the very first thing you do is ignore your dog when they're trying to jump up on you, and you go and put your bags down and maybe use the restroom, get another cup of coffee or whatever you need to do, and then you give your dog the attention they want, they've had time to cool down, calm down, and not be jumping on you. And at that point, you're accidentally conditioning the dog that if they're cool and calm, they get the attention they've been wanting. So dogs are always learning, whether you like it or not. Their environment around them. If you are walking a dog, right, and let's say the dog lunges or pulls on the lead at another dog, a human, a bicyclist, and stuff like that, or is barking up a storm. A lot of things that we do for accidental conditioning that we don't realize is that we get down here and we start, it's okay, right? What do you think that's doing?
Just reinforcing.
Is reinforcing that behavior. Yes, we think that we're soothing a dog, but we're not. We're praising the dog for lunging and barking is what the dog sees it as. So we're accidentally conditioning that behavior, and we have to remember that although dogs do show behavior like humans do, whether it be fear, anxiety, happiness, joy, affection, everything like that, they can experience. They experience in a very different way, though. Dogs live in the now. Dogs perceive things in the now. And so whenever they're doing a behavior and we reward them or we punish them because of said behavior, they are going to learn from it. They're also going to learn from their environment as well. This is why examples would be, let's say you're on a leash again, and you're walking, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a cat just came up and attacked your dog, right? That dog is now going to be accidentally conditioned, or not accidentally conditioned by you, but just by the environment around them, that cats are scary. So I might be aggressive towards cats. That could be one outcome. Might not be. It could be that you were trying to pull the dog away from the cat and trying to break it up and stuff, and so that pressure on the lead really forced an internalized feeling of when there's a leash pressure, I get injured. So now I'm afraid of going on walks with a leash because every time I walk and there's pressure, I'm freaking out because I think I'm going to get attacked. There's a lot of different things, and when it comes to behaviors, especially reactivity, whether it's aggression reactivity or it's like fear or anything like that, it's usually extremely complex. It's usually layered. And what we need to do is try to look at the baseline. Why is it layered? What are we doing in our own household, and what's the environment doing around that has created these behaviors? And normally it's because of the conditioning that the dog had without us realizing that they were conditioning. Yes?
Just had a question on our dog that goes crazy like after cars or trucks. I think we've talked to you about it in the past. But when she was a puppy, we did the clicker, and at the beginning, we'd give it a treat right away, and then the car would just pass. But as time went on, the clicker and the treat just didn't, reinforce to stop that behavior.
Yeah.
She just ignored it, and now she's actually worse.
Okay. So yes, that
in a car or truck, she just goes crazy.
Absolutely. So let's go and let's look at operant conditioning. Okay. So dogs have drives. They have motivations. They have a sense of self. They are self-aware animals, and if they have a motivation or something that is more enticing than your clicker or your treat, then your clicker and treat doesn't matter, right? And this is why I say that punishment, teaching boundaries, teaching guidelines is really important, because they're not going to ever know what is acceptable or what is unacceptable until we teach them what is unacceptable. So an example would be if we're always using the treats and clickers to condition the dog to do whatever, that's a reinforcer that's going to increase the behavior. The dog's never going to know that running after these cars and pulling after these cars and reacting towards these cars is a negative thing. What they're going to know is that, cool, if I come over here to you, I get a treat, but this is so much more fun. This is so much more interesting. I really want to get this. I hate that more than I love treats. Or whatever the thing is going on in the dog's head, and at that point, any treat is out the window. It doesn't matter. And so that's why I believe when I worked with your dog, we did some back and forths. And if you notice, when we did our back and forths, I did some leash corrections, right? Yeah. And so what leash corrections are, and I'm sure you saw it, is I'm never going to pull a dog on a leash, just pull a dog on a leash. It's going to be a pop, right? But it's never going to be a big enough pop to make a dog go flying. They don't need that much pressure, but it's enough to make a dog say, whoa, what was that? That's what we want. We want the dog to get out of that mindset, and we want to correct that as well. And then after I use the leash pop, the correction real quick, I turn and go in the opposite direction, and then you stay here, you calm down, then we continue again. That right there is creating a correction of the behavior, a punishment for an unwanted behavior in order to continue doing something that they love, which is going on a walk. So that is very, very good example of why only using one quadrant of the operant conditioning with punishments and reinforcements is not always the best, because dogs have to learn on all four quadrants in order to really fully learn. Types of learning, okay? So we talked about classical conditioning, learning to link two stimuluses together. and it becomes an internalized reaction. We talked about operant conditioning, which is changes in behavior based on choice and the environmental factors around them, consequences. And we haven't talked about cognitive learning. We have a little bit, but we haven't really said what it is. It's acquiring the new behaviors based on watching, paying attention. Here's a really fun example. My cat. I have a cat named Eno. She uses cognitive learning constantly, enough to where she has watched us open our door, our front door, and she has learned to open the front door. So we started deadbolting it. She watched us enough to now she knows how to unlock the door and open the door. So I have had to result in installing a slide that locks and then locks over that lock, so that way there's too many things for her to figure out. That is cognitive learning. Dogs do it too. And yeah, that's just one example for me personally. So everything we do, the dogs are going to keep learning, whether it's going to be one of the conditionings or cognitive learning. Cognitive learning is going to be all day, every day. When you're not training your dog, you're still training your dog. If your dog realizes that every single time you're at the computer, you're going to ignore them, they're probably going to stop coming up to you for attention stuff because they have learned that this is your behavior. Whenever you're at the computer, you don't give them the attention, and that is your behavior. And so they are learning that way. They're learning that I see a squirrel, and the squirrel always runs up this tree. So maybe I'm going to be a little more sneaky and try to sneak around the backside of the tree. That's cognitive learning. They're learning from their environment. Puppies learn from their litter mates. They learn from their moms. One way, shape, or form. The cognitive learning as well would be, you see this a lot in a lot of playful puppies where they like to be mouthy and sometimes they bite too hard. With their litter mates, the litter mates will make a loud yelp, and that is telling the puppy that that's too hard of a bite, and they start learning how to control that pressure. We can do that too. I actually just had a training session right before this where that was an issue with their dog, is having too much pressure on their bite. And what they're doing is they keep trying to push the dog away, and the dog thinks, oh, this is playtime, I'm going to go after these hands. They don't know what to do. But they did eventually tell me that their smaller dog, whenever the pressure's too hard, the bite's too hard, does this huge shriek, and then their dog like backs off. I'm like, then mimic the dog. You know, us thinking as humans, us thinking that we can talk dog better than dogs can talk dog is really vain of us. So we have sometimes mimicking the other animals and what they do is really important. And this is also why corrections are important too, because not a single animal out there has ever gone through life with just rewards to learn and function properly. So example with dogs is if a dog is too much, let's say a puppy is too much on a mother's nipple. The mother is going to correct that and push the dog away, sometimes snap at the back of the neck real quick. Is correcting the dog and that behavior to make sure it doesn't continue happening. They do it constantly. If you see a dog in a dog park, and let's say one dog mounts another dog, that dog that got mounted does not like it, you're going to see that dog turn around and snap at that other dog. The dog that snapped at the other dog has enough bite force that it could have killed that dog easily, but it doesn't. It's just correcting the behavior, and then that other dog that mounted is probably going to not mount that specific dog again. Cognitive learning, operant conditioning, and classical conditioning can also be very, very beneficial when you have a multi-human household and you play and treat your dogs a little differently, or at least you want your dogs to treat you a little differently. An example would say, let's say you like to roughhouse with your dog, and you're okay with your dog biting a little harder, but you're not. You can absolutely condition a dog in order to know who is allowing this and who doesn't, who should I be more aggressively playful to, and who shouldn't I? Kim over here is a very, very solid example of that. My 90-pound Catahoula is allowed to run at me, wheelbarrow into me, you know, be whatever crazy dog she wants to be with me. Obviously, she is trained and knows when enough is enough, but I allow it with me. When she comes barreling at Kim, she comes barreling and stops and sits there and waits for Kim to pet her. That is that is a condition that she has learned based on how we treat her individually as individuals ourselves. I allow my dog to do specific things with me, while Kim doesn't allow it with her, and the dog has, with cognitive learning, realized what behaviors are allowed per individual person. Let's do some Q&A, and then as we do some Q&A, I believe that I can probably come up with some other more in-depth talking point based on questions you guys have about anything right here or anything with training at all. So.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, there's so many. Great. All right, I got the slipper thing.
Okay.
I'll go in. I'll let her out, do her thing.
Okay.
She's still kind of excited. So when she was a puppy, we still do this now, we have just Cheerios, and she'll nip up my sneakers, or whatever I have on, slippers, whatever, all the way to the kitchen. So the corrective action I've tried to do is, when she enters the house, we have some Cheerios there, I tell her to sit, give her a Cheerio or two, and then she'll follow me to the kitchen and not bite at my slippers.
Okay.
Is that okay? Is that good or bad? Because if I don't give her the Cheerios, she'll literally go up my shoe or slipper all the way to the kitchen.
Is it good or bad? Yes. My answer is yes. It's neither. It's neither good nor bad. If it works for your dog in your situation, then it does. We have to have the proper expectations for our own individual dogs in our household, and an example would be whenever I'm training a dog for just a non-working dog. I try to not use certain clickers and things like that. I try to minimize the amount of treats I'm using because it's not really going to work for you as individuals when it comes to your everyday lifestyle. You're not going to walk around with a pocket full of treats 24/7, and you're not going to remember to come out of the house and every day grab that clicker. So I try to set the proper expectations when I train, but I also like to set the proper expectations when it comes to that individual dog, right? And if the dog, for instance, let's say the dog just doesn't like sitting down, right? But we want them to learn a stay command. It is completely appropriate to allow them to stand up and stay. Like setting those expectations. So for you, as an example, the expectations are, my dog is really excited, and when my dog is excited, and if I just walk past and go into the kitchen, tries to get at my slippers, you probably accidentally condition the dog that you're going to give the dog attention because they're going to nip at your slippers, so they're going to do it more often. The attention could be as simply as, no, get off me. You're touching the dog. You're giving the attention, so now the dog's trying to do it more. But because your dog is also very Cheerio motivated, the leaving the Cheerios over there has become better than the nipping at the slippers for attention. So if that works for your dog and works for your home environment, then perfect. Keep doing it. If you prefer not have to do the Cheerio thing, and you rather be able to walk without the nipping at the shoes, then I would say it's a bad thing because you're not conditioning the dog properly to stop doing that behavior.
Okay. And I think you're right, because Suzanne always says this. The dog is better behaved with her, but she must know that, like, I'm a sap or something.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely, for sure.
There's that guy.
Yeah, leading back to the training I just did right before I came in here. The dog listens to dad of the house. Dog doesn't really listen to mom of the house. I also found out that dad does most of the training and has the guidelines and the nose, and this is where my line is. You don't cross that line. And mom is all like, come cuddle on me and stuff. It's like, and I had to tell her that it's you. You have allowed the dog to cross all of those boundaries at all times, and now the dog is going to do whatever they want with you, but not dad.
But I can still correct.
Oh yeah, you can absolutely correct it. Yeah, there's the whole saying that you can't teach an old dog new tricks is a lie. It's a lie. Sometimes you can't teach dog owners new tricks. Is really what it is. So having a more open mind about training And training methodologies and understanding more about your animal's behavior is really important. Watch your dogs. See how they react and interact with their environment around them, and it will tell you a lot. So that way we actually learn how to speak dog better. And I think that's really important when it comes to training as well. Good examples would be is when we're going after the shoe, trying to get your attention, what body language is actually going on, and that's going to tell you a little bit more about why is this dog doing this, what is the underlying cause, where's the root, and that will give you more success in training, for sure. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, another one of his things. We eat in our kitchen like, for every meal,
Okay.
just the two of us. So sometimes we'll leave the dog out in the living room or whatever, but we have to put up a gate so she won't come into the kitchen.
Okay.
So there are the times when we just let her come into the kitchen and see what happens. So we're eating and we're talking and so on, and all of a sudden she jumps up and she's looking around to see what's on the table, and then we kind of give her a look and she jumps down. She will do that consistently 20 times while we're eating our meal. And he does, and not, she doesn't come over near me.
She does it to me, but I never give her any food.
Never give her food.
But she knows
Okay.
I'm a sap somewhere.
Yeah. We must have given her food from the table at some point. Could that have been?
Okay, so counter surfing.
A long time ago.
Counter surfing, like you're explaining, is the jumping up, looking at the table, seeing what's on there. Dogs are going to take advantage of every opportunity they have to reward themselves. That's just natural behavior for a dog. We can train a dog to not do that. It takes time, but allowing the dog to, when your dog jumps up on the table, what do you do?
I say, I actually physically push her down and say no. And it takes about, like Suzanne says,
2 seconds later, there she
if
is.
she is on the other side of the table, I go no. And it just disrupts the whole dinner. But I'm not giving her any food.
Okay.
But I might have in the past, like maybe
Giving her some attention.
attention or something, yeah.
Although we have tried to ignore her, but that doesn't work.
Okay, so I would say at this point, if you've done the whole physically moving you off the table nose, you don't give her any scraps from the table, you also do the ignoring and none of that is working, removing her from your environment. I would say instead of immediately before dinner putting up the gate, leave the gate down, right? Leave the gate down, allow your dog to be in your space in the kitchen. The moment that she jumps up on the table is when you come around and you set the gate up and now she's not allowed in the kitchen. What she's going to do from there is start realizing, I want to be in the kitchen around you, but the moment I do this one behavior, I get removed and I'm not allowed back in here. The more consistent you are doing that, the higher chance is that she's going to stop doing that behavior because she'd rather be around you and be closer to the environment and the action going on at that time. That's what I would do. Yeah.
Question about, I've got like 100 of them I can ask you, but what
Oh, for sure, yeah.
introducing dogs and cats? I didn't intend to have a house full of dogs, but I do now. 4 dogs at this point. And the 2 cats are now relegated to the upstairs because 2 of the dogs are alone.
Okay.
I'm trying to
Great.
go upstairs and like slowly introduce them. And it's not getting anywhere.
Okay, perfect. So cats are fun. Cats are great. Cats are very self-reliant. Cats also make their own decisions a lot more. Cats are smarter than dogs. That is 100% true. Cats are. I'm a dog person. I love dogs. That's my whole thing. Cats are smarter. They are. So when it comes to introducing dogs and cats, you have to be very vigilant about everything. You have to make sure that first your cat has a retreatable, safe space they can go. For you, it's probably upstairs. For you, it might be upstairs. That's their safe space. So having a safe space that they can go to is really important to get away from the environment, right? So that is the first thing. The second thing for introductions is not forcing it, right? If you bring the dogs upstairs in the cat's safe space, you're ruining that safe space for them and it's stressing them out. But allow the cats to be cats, and they will eventually start coming down and inspecting the area from a distance and getting closer and closer. Now here's the important part. The important part is knowing that dogs have a chase instinct, a drive to chase. Cats have a run instinct. hand in hand, guess what happens? Dogs chase, cats run, dog thinks it's a game, cat freaks out, cat swats at dog, dog gets hurt, and now they have a bad relationship. We want to prevent that completely from happening, right? And when the way we do it is stop the chase, right? The moment that our dog gets all up in the cat's business and we know the cat is not comfortable, we stop it from happening. A very easy solution to that is a squirt bottle. Squirt bottles are not harmful to the dog, but most dogs don't like being squirt with a little squirt bottle, right? So the moment that the dog goes to go chase, we're going to first do some classical conditioning. Leave it, squirt, right? Always leave it or no or stop, whatever. You can say oogie boogie for all I care. Whatever you need to say that is going to be your term to get out of the cat's business, that's what we need to do, and then squirt immediately after. Now you're creating a classical condition to where the term leave it means I get squirt, squirt's bad. Now eventually I can take away the squirt altogether and use that leave it command, right?
Say the word first.
Say the word first to create the classical conditioning, and that classical conditioning is also operant conditioning, and to where we are adding a punishment for a behavior that we want to decrease. So that would be a positive punishment, adding something to decrease a behavior. So we are working on two spectrums, classical conditioning and operant conditioning, so that way the dog fully understands that that's not acceptable behavior, right?
Same reaction when the cat starts to come downstairs towards dinner time, the dog freaks out, starts running at her, give the same reaction.
Yeah, you can use the squirt bottle for that too. Leave it. You can teach a place command or a crate command if you want to. You can even leave the crate door open, but you can say if the dog is like that, squirt, leave it. If they do it again, crate, right? You can easily teach that so that way the dog really fully understands that, okay, I already got punished for this, but now my punishment is a little more severe. The crate, though, the biggest thing about crate training, I would say, is that you don't want to use the crate as punishment all the time. You don't want to use it as punishment all the time. You can use it as a space to calm down, but it's not the first go-to for punishment. That's their safe space. You want them to understand that that's their little den right there that they can go to whenever they want. And that's why I said you can leave the crate door open. Don't lock them in there. Leave the crate door open. You know, if you already have them crate trained to where they accept being in the crate, that's no different than a place command.
Okay, so just teaching that's where you're supposed to go.
Yeah, that's where you're supposed to go to calm down and chill out and let the cats. Now, as far as cats, let's continue this because it gets more, right? So as far as cats, felines, in the dog's world, there's going to be a pecking order, right? In the felines world, there's going to be a pecking order. The thing is, the cats have to be at the top. They are king of the crop. This is their house, and the dogs just live there, right? That's how we have to see it and treat it. And you don't have to be mean. Again, dogs are here to please. They want you to be happy, and they want you to give them all the love and attention in the world. They want to be around their people, right? That's just the animals they are today. And let's say your cat is up in the bed with you, and they don't get along real well at this point. But let's say they tolerate each other. If your dog looks at the cat and starts going towards the cat just to sniff or whatever, no, you can remove the dog from the bed, from your space, and keep the cat there. That's going to tell the dog that, hey, that cat owns this bed. The cat's in charge. If you can teach that, you're going to have a really well-balanced house. My two dogs are both high drive breeds. A Catahoula leopard dog is a hunting and herding dog. And then I have a husky. We all know how huskies are with their chase drive and their pride drive. And I have 3 cats. And they all live together in a small space. One of my cats does not like the dogs really much, but at this point tolerates them. The other cat has always just tolerated, and then my third cat will sleep on the back of my dog, right? So again, cats also have their own personalities, but I've also made sure that no matter what, all of the cats own this house, and the dogs just live in it. That's the only way to really get through to it. And again, with the classical conditioning, sometimes you are going to have extinction. And so we're going to have to reassert that squirt bottle again. After we don't have to use it anymore, we might have to use it again. So with me, I don't have to use my squirt bottles at all, but I always keep one next to me in the spaces that I normally hang out. So that way, if I really have to grab it and I will. It's just the easiest way to reach from a distance. You could use an e-collar, but a lot of people, unless you have a professional come and train you how to use an e-collar, I say no. Because you can, again, easily abuse a piece of equipment like that, unknowingly abuse a piece of equipment like that, and we don't want to do that. That can cause a lot more reactivity issues and layered issues by using equipment like that wrong. While a squirt bottle, it's kind of hard to use a squirt bottle wrong unless you're using it when you shouldn't be using it, right? So again, timing is everything. The appropriate approach is everything. We don't punish all the time for no reason. Let dogs be dogs, right? And so if I'm going to use the squirt bottle or an e-collar or any type of aversion, it's only going to be for the safety of the pet all around, right? So examples would be I don't want my dog to get in a fight with the cats, right? That's safety for the cats and the dog. I'm going to use an aversive technique that I can reach them from a distance. I don't want my dogs jumping the fence, running out on the highway right next to my house. So I've trained them on an e-collar so that way they understand the boundaries of the house. So that way, I rather my dogs get a very small shock than get hit and killed by a car, right? And that's really important to me. I'm okay with certain aversions and techniques as long as it's keeping my animals safe and happy. And all around, that's all we want. We want a really well-balanced environment for our animals and allow them to be, for instance, dogs, let them be dogs, but let them be safe.
One more question, maybe it's the same or similar answer, but I've got a German Shepherd and a Dutch Shepherd. Very territorial. People walk by the house, they go nuts. I want them to guard the house, but I don't want them to go nuts.
Okay.
How do I start to teach the differences there?
Okay. So I wanted to say you can still use the squirt bottle technique, but that's not always the appropriate technique for this specifically. And the reason why is because we don't want to teach them completely to stop doing it, right? Because if we use the squirt bottle technique, then at that point, they might associate that anytime they do it, they're going to get the punishment for it, right? What we want to teach them is a leave it command. And the leave it command, again, the squirt bottle can work with the leave it command, but it also might be across the board, never do it. So a leave it command, a go and get method can work. And what that would be is they're barking, that's great. But once it gets too much, leave it, right? You have to be very crisp and stern with your voice. Leave it. You want to break them out of their tunnel vision that they're going in right now, right? And if they don't listen, you go up, leave it, and you bring them back, and then and you can let them go again. If they go up, leave it and come back. And eventually what they'll realize is that when you say leave it, they're going to get removed from the area they want to be. That's a good way you can do it. You can put them in another room, put a little gate up if you want to. So basically, dogs are very, very, space is important to them, right? And if they want to be in a certain space, you can use that to your advantage, right? We already talked about spatial pressure, right? So you can use advantage of where they want to be in order to increase or remove behaviors. So pay attention to where the dog wants to be. If the space is you're the space, move the dog away from your space. If the window is the space, remove the dog from the window. Eventually, the dog will know that I want to be looking out this window, but every time he says leave it and I continue this behavior, I don't get to look out the window anymore. Yeah.
Sure.
Yep. So yeah, I would definitely start with that.
Could you use the water technique for like that car scenario we were talking about, or that how it would work? Or should be soaking wet by the time you're done with the wash?
I wouldn't. Yes, but it also at that point it's a coin toss on how she's going to react, right? So I would have to physically see it again and really in depth look at some body language, because I need to figure out, is the reactivity because she thinks it's fun? If that's the case, yeah, do it. But is the reactivity because she's scared?
I think it's more scared.
Yeah, if she's scared, right? If a dog is scared and then you're adding an aversion that's punishment, like a squirt bottle, it might increase the fear. And you don't want to increase the fear of the cars if that's the reason why she's reacting to cars. You can use the leash pop if you want to, but what I would say with that, when I was working with your dog, what I did was a lot of back and forths, and I was only really using the leash pop Not specifically when the car was there. When it started going to the car, I turned around and went the opposite direction, right? Yeah. You don't get to go and lunge where you want to lunge, right? Whenever I was using the leash pop was specifically when just walking normally. I'm walking, you get to the end, I stop, and I do a little pop. I walk and keep doing it. And what the idea behind it, what I talked to you about was we want your dog to focus on you more than the environment around. And if you are always randomly stopping and then they're like, whoa, what was that? Just randomly, or you just turn around and go in opposite direction, they're going to eventually want to pay attention to you and what you're doing, which is going to decrease their reactivity to anything else around because they're not going to be focusing on it. Heel walking, loose leash walking is going to be your most beneficial aspect of that. And then once that is really set in stone on, I'm going to walk really nicely next to you the whole time, and I'm not going to just randomly pull when I want to, and I'm going to pay attention to you. At that point, that's whenever the lunging at a car happens, then we can start addressing that more in depth. And at that point, you probably could go into the squirt bottle method because you've already set the baseline on what's an acceptable walk. And so now she understands that if I walk nicely next to you, I never get popped. It's a pleasant walk. But now when I lunge, I get squirt, and now I'm associating the aspect of not the car, but the lunge. So that's what we want to do. We want to associate the specific thing to the repercussions or consequence.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Yep. Reactivity during grooms. You see it the most with nails. That's what you're going to see it the most. That blow dryers and things like that, sure. And that's usually a noise reactivity. And you'll see it with vacuum cleaners and things like that. I believe your dog was very I have a video. Yes, I have a video of your dog being reactive towards my blow dryer, my pressure dryer, and then I also have it to where you see the after where she's just sitting there, I'm a collie and I'm just going to enjoy this blow dry. Yeah, and it was so.
It was like she was going crazy barking, and then later she was just like Fabio with her hair on in the wind. It was like, I couldn't believe it.
Yep, and that was simple. Basically, what I realized with the blow dryer for her, she wanted to control the situation, and that's why she didn't like the blow dryer. I'm going to bite at the blow dryer and stuff. It wasn't even, yes, the sound and stuff like that, but she's trying to control it. Stop. Whatever you're doing, stop. I don't like it. I'm controlling the situation. So all I had to do was correct her from trying to control the situation. Dogs back here on the back of the neck, the scruff. No, excuse me, because she was in the bath. I didn't have a collar on her or anything. I didn't want to get all of her equipment wet. So a lot of times the back of the scruff is not painful for a dog, but it's very easy. You could pick up a dog just like this with that. It's not going to hurt them. So what I did was every single time she went to go bite at the blow dryer, I didn't remove the blow dryer from doing what I was doing, because if she did that, then she's going to learn that if I bite or bark at it, it gets removed and I'm going to keep doing it. Instead, I kept doing what I was doing. When she bit, I just, right here in the back of the scruff, I did that and just moved her head in a different direction, let it go every time she did it. And eventually she realized that if she does that, she gets moved into a direction and that she doesn't want to be in, but it's not going to stop either way. So I'm just going to chill. And that's all I did. Yeah, very simple. Yeah, very simple. Like, honestly, training a dog, once you know all the information that we went over, and obviously there's a lot to learn, and it's super in-depth, but it's actually a little more simple than we think. We just, unfortunately, anthropomorphize dogs. We really do, and we think dogs are humans. Like that's how we treat them. They're not. They're not, right? Right? Like the amount of times that, dogs are smart. They can learn hundreds and hundreds of words and commands. They can. They understand so much. They're super intelligent creatures, but they're dogs. They're not humans. So the whole my fur baby and things like that is fine. That's your little child of the household. That's cool. I'm cool with it, right? But we still have to remember that they're dogs, right? A good example is boundaries. Right, setting boundaries is super, super important for a household that's well balanced with your pet. A lot of times our dogs will come up and demand attention. You're sitting down, the dog is demanding attention, and because we love our dog, they're so cute, we automatically give it to them. We were accidentally conditioning them at that point that when they demand attention, I give it to them, they're going to keep demanding attention. Imagine you have a kid and you're doing whatever you're doing, working, watching the news or whatever, and that kid is all up your rear. Hey, can I show you this? 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 You're going to tell that kid, go somewhere else, please. I am busy. Why don't we do that to our dogs? We should. We should absolutely set those boundaries. But yeah, anthropomorphizing dogs is probably the worst thing we can do. Again, it's extremely, extremely vain of humans to think we can speak dog better than dogs can speak dog. And that is it for me. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.